The year was 2478, a time when humans finally touched the stars. The people of Earth had built great ships that could travel faster than light, crossing galaxies in weeks instead of centuries. They believed peace was waiting for them among the stars. But space was not peaceful. It was vast, dangerous, and already full of powerful empires. When humans first met the Kareth Dominion, they thought they had found friends. The Kareth were tall, shining beings covered in armor-like skin that reflected light like polished stone. They spoke with calm voices and followed rules older than Earth itself. For a short time, both species traded knowledge and resources. Then one misunderstanding changed everything. A mining ship from Earth entered Kareth space by mistake. The Kareth called it an invasion. They attacked, and humanity answered with force. The War of Vega 9 began, a war no one had truly wanted. On a gray morning under a red sky, Lieutenant Mason Hale stood inside the command trench, watching the horizon burn. The wind carried dust and smoke from the destroyed hills. Every few seconds, distant explosions shook the ground, and the air filled with the scent of melted metal and ozone. Mason was only 28, but his uniform was already marked with scars and burns. His eyes were tired, yet sharp. Around him, human soldiers checked their plasma rifles, replaced batteries, and whispered small prayers under their breath. A young private beside him asked, "Sir, do you think we'll make it?" Mason looked at the boy's trembling hands. "We'll make it if we hold the line," he said. "That's all we can do right now." The boy nodded, trying to look brave. Overhead, massive human battleships floated like dark clouds, their engines glowing blue. The command screens in the trench flickered with signals. The Kareth fleet was closing in fast, thousands of ships moving with perfect formation. The human general's voice came through the radio. "All units, prepare for final defense. Vega 9 must not fall. Hold your ground." Every soldier knew what that meant. If Vega 9 fell, Earth would be next. When the first Kareth ships entered the atmosphere, the sky lit up. Their weapons burned through the clouds like white fire. Human defenses opened in response, sending waves of plasma back. The ground shook under the thunder of war. Mason gave orders calmly, his voice steady even as explosions tore through nearby bunkers. "Keep the generators online. Focus fire on the eastern ridge. Don't let them breach." Through his visor, he saw the enemy, tall, insect-like warriors in armor that shimmered gold and green. They moved with terrifying speed, their energy blades cutting through barriers. Yet the humans held their ground, refusing to give an inch. Hours turned into chaos. The battlefield became a storm of light, smoke, and sound. Mason fought beside his squad, his rifle heating under constant fire. Every moment felt endless. Then suddenly the Kareth stopped advancing. The firing ceased. The air grew still. "What's happening?" Mason asked. The communications officer frowned. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission." "From who?" The officer's face went pale. "From the Kareth Queen herself." No one spoke. Even the machines seemed to fall silent. The Kareth Queen was a legend, ruler of billions said to command entire fleets with a single word. Her appearance in battle was rare. Her voice was never heard by enemies. "Put it through," Mason ordered. The static cleared and a voice filled the trench. Smooth, echoing, almost musical. It wasn't cold like most alien voices. It sounded alive. "Humans of Vega 9, she said. You have fought bravely. But this war serves no purpose. You bleed for a misunderstanding." Her words came not as a threat, but as something strange, a tone of curiosity. Mason exchanged looks with his men. No one dared to reply. Then, before the general could respond, Mason's headset crackled again. "Identify the one who speaks for humanity," the Queen said. The general hesitated. "This is General Rains, commanding officer of—" "Not you," she interrupted. "The one who answered my signal yesterday." Everyone turned toward Mason. He blinked, confused. Yesterday, during a communication test, he had accidentally responded to a strange coded signal. He thought it was enemy chatter. He had simply said, "This is Lieutenant Hale, identify yourself." And now it seemed the alien queen herself had heard him. The general looked at Mason sharply. "What did you do, Lieutenant?" "Nothing, sir. I thought it was a scout frequency." The radio crackled again, her voice softer this time. "Mason Hale." "You are the one." The soldiers stared at him. The Queen had said his name. Mason tried to steady his breath. "This is Lieutenant Hale," he said into the mic. "Who am I speaking to?" The voice replied. "I am Sarathis, Queen of the Kareth Dominion. You spoke to me before, human. I wish to speak again." Every human in the trench froze. The general mouthed silently. "She wants to speak to you." "Queen Sarathis," Mason said slowly. "Why contact me?" "Because," she replied, "you did not speak with hatred. You asked for a name, not a surrender. You're curious like me." Her tone carried a strange warmth. Mason couldn't explain it, but it made his heart pound. "Your people are dying," Mason said. "So are mine. If you want peace, end this." There was a pause. Then she said, "Peace requires understanding. Meet me and I will explain." The command trench erupted in whispers. The general shouted, "Absolutely not!" "It's a trap." But the queen spoke again, her voice calm and certain. "I give my word as sovereign. No harm will come to him. This war has lasted long enough. I want to see the face of the human who spoke without fear." The channel went silent. Mason looked at his general. "Sir?" Rains sighed heavily. "If you go, you'll be walking into an alien capital ship alone." Mason nodded. "Maybe, but if it stops the fighting, it's worth trying." The general studied him for a long time, then said, "You've got 10 minutes to prepare." The transport shuttle was small and silver, barely large enough for 2 people. Mason sat inside it as it rose into the red sky. Below, the human base looked like a small wound on the planet's surface. Above, the Kareth fleet floated like shining insects made of light and glass. As his shuttle approached the largest vessel, a black diamond-shaped ship larger than a city, he felt his pulse quicken. A beam of golden energy reached out and pulled his craft inside. The light faded, and he found himself in a vast hangar filled with glowing machines and tall alien guards. They didn't move or raise weapons. They simply watched as he stepped out. Then a door opened and she appeared. The alien queen Sarathis walked slowly toward him. Her form was graceful, her armor shining like liquid crystal. Her eyes glowed a deep amber. She was taller than any human, yet her movements were smooth, almost human-like. For a moment, Mason forgot every weapon, every plan, every order. He simply stared. "You are smaller than I imagined," she said softly, almost teasing. "And you're taller," he replied before he could stop himself. The corner of her mouth curved slightly. A smile, bravery and humor, very human traits. The alien guards around them glanced at each other. None of them had ever seen their queen smile. Mason swallowed. "Why call me here?" "Because you spoke without hatred," she said. "Because you looked at the stars and saw wonder, not conquest." He took a breath. "Then stop the war. End this before more die." Her golden eyes studied him for a long time. "Perhaps I will. But first I must understand you," he frowned. "Understand me?" "Yes," she said, stepping closer. "Humans fight with fury, yet speak of peace. You destroy and build in the same breath. You are fascinating." Her voice softened again, filled with something strange, not command, not threat, but interest. "Tell me, Mason Hale, what does your heart truly seek in this endless sky?" For a moment he didn't know what to say. Behind him, the silent guards, the humming machines, and the vast alien ship all seemed to fade. It felt like only the two of them existed, a human soldier and an alien queen, staring at each other across the impossible distance between their worlds. Outside, the battlefront remained quiet. Every soldier waited, their eyes on the sky, wondering what would happen next. And when the queen's laughter suddenly echoed across the communication channels, soft, melodic, and almost human, every soldier on both sides froze. For the first time in the entire war, the galaxy went silent. The silence inside the alien ship felt heavy, almost alive. Mason Hale stood in front of Queen Sarathis, unsure whether to salute, bow, or simply breathe. Around them, the air shimmered faintly with golden energy. The floor beneath his boots was smooth like glass, glowing with soft blue light. The queen's tall figure moved gracefully, every step calm and measured. Her armor reflected the light in patterns like ripples of water. Her amber eyes studied Mason as if he were the most curious thing in the universe. "You are brave to come here," she said softly, her voice echoing across the hall. "I didn't have much of a choice," Mason replied, trying to sound steady. Sarathis tilted her head slightly. "That is what humans always say when they do something courageous." He almost smiled. "Maybe, but it's also true." Her lips curved again in that strange, almost human smile. The alien guards standing nearby shifted uneasily. They had never seen their queen smile twice in one day. Mason followed her through a grand corridor filled with glowing pillars and strange floating symbols. The air smelled faintly like rain after a storm. Outside the transparent walls he could see space itself, dark and endless, dotted with stars. "This ship," Mason said quietly. "It's beautiful." "It is the heart of my fleet," Sarathis replied. "Built by generations who believed perfection was duty. Yet it feels empty now." "Empty?" She paused, looking out at the stars. "We built for control, not joy. The Kareth do not laugh, Mason Hale. We do not sing, we live to obey." Mason glanced at her. "And you? You're their queen, don't you command them?" "I do," she said, her voice softening. "But a ruler is also a prisoner of her people's laws. I have never spoken freely. Until now," her gaze turned toward him, deep and unreadable. "When you spoke to me over the signal, I felt something different. Your tone was curious, not fearful. You asked for my name. No soldier has ever done that." Mason scratched the back of his neck. "I didn't know I was talking to royalty." She gave a small laugh, low and clear. "Perhaps that is why I answered." They entered a circular chamber filled with tall, shining columns. At its center was a platform surrounded by a soft blue mist. When the queen stepped forward, the columns lit up, showing moving images, memories of stars, battles, and alien cities. "This is the Hall of Memory," she explained. "It holds the knowledge of my people for 1,000 cycles." Mason walked closer, fascinated by the images. "You keep your whole history here?" "Yes, every victory, every loss, every command. But no moment of kindness." "We erase those," he frowned. "Why?" "Because kindness makes the strong weak," she said quietly. "At least that is what they believe." She looked at him again, and for a brief second her face seemed tired, not of power, but of loneliness. Mason understood that feeling. He'd seen it in soldiers who had lost too much. "You don't sound like someone who believes that," he said. "I do not," she admitted. "Not anymore." Her hand brushed lightly across one of the glowing columns. The mist shifted, showing a vision of Earth, oceans, mountains, clouds. Mason stepped closer in surprise. "You've seen Earth?" "I've watched your broadcasts," she said. "Your people sing, dance, and argue. You build cities only to rebuild them again. You are chaotic, yet alive." He smiled a little. "We call that living." She turned to him, eyes glowing softly. "Perhaps that is what I envy." For a long time, neither spoke. The silence between them wasn't cold. It felt like a calm pause before something important. Then Sarathis gestured to a crystal table that formed from the mist. "Sit," she said gently. Mason hesitated, then obeyed. The table glowed, displaying holograms of both armies locked in endless combat. Red and blue lights showed ships destroyed, planets burning, soldiers lost. "This war," she said, pointing to the display, "began because of pride. One human mining vessel entered a forbidden system. My council saw it as an insult. I saw it as an error. But I was overruled." "So you didn't want the war," Mason said. "No," she replied. "But once blood was spilled, both sides wanted victory more than peace. That is how wars always grow." Mason stared at the hologram. "Too many good people are dying for nothing." "Agreed," she said. "That is why I wish to stop it." He looked up quickly. "You can stop it?" "Just like that, I can, if I have a reason to defy my own counsel." Her tone changed slightly, softer, deeper. Mason realized she was studying him again. "Perhaps you could be that reason." He blinked, unsure if he heard her correctly. "Me? Yes, human." "You are unusual." He laughed nervously. "That's one way to say it." Sarathis leaned closer, her golden eyes bright. "You do not tremble before me. You speak freely. No Kareth would dare." "Well," Mason said, meeting her gaze, "on Earth we believe respect isn't the same as fear." Her lips curved again, a slow smile forming. "A dangerous belief. But I find it interesting. Back at the human base, chaos erupted. Commanders demanded updates. No one could believe Mason was still alive after so many hours on the alien flagship. Some whispered that the Queen was using him for mind games. Others said she was stalling the war for her own plan. General Rains slammed his hand on the table. "We can't just sit and wait." "What if she's trying to break him?" A communications officer replied. "Sir, we're still getting his signal." "It's calm." "He's talking to her, still." Talking? The general repeated. He's supposed to negotiate, not chat. But even he knew deep down, if the Queen hadn't harmed Mason by now, something unusual was happening aboard that ship. Meanwhile, inside the alien vessel, the conversation continued. Sarathis asked about human emotions, what love was, why humans laughed, why they cried over small things. Mason answered as best he could. He told her about family, about friends, about moments that made life worth living. Your people are strange, she said thoughtfully. You risk death for those who matter to you. You fight for ideals, not just survival. That's what makes us human, he said. She nodded slowly. Then perhaps that is what I must learn, what it means to feel, not just command. Her words surprised him. You really want to understand humans? I want to understand you, she corrected. Mason's pulse quickened, but he tried to hide it. That's a big task, Your Majesty. Then let us begin small, she said with a faint smile. Tell me about laughter. Hours passed. Mason spoke of jokes and music, of celebrations after long battles, of how people on Earth could laugh even in pain. Sarathis listened closely, sometimes repeating the sound softly, as if learning a new language. At one point, she asked him to describe a sunset. Mason tried, but words failed. So she used her technology to project one, a glowing sky over an alien ocean, colors of orange, pink, and blue mixing together. He whispered, That's close, almost perfect. She watched the image and said quietly, Perhaps one day I will see the real thing. He smiled. Maybe one day you will. Their eyes met again. For a long moment, neither looked away. Later, when Mason returned to his shuttle, Sarathis stood at the edge of the hangar, watching. Lieutenant Hale, she said, her voice softer than before. I will contact you again soon. There is more to learn, he nodded. I'll be here. Of that, she said with a faint smile, I have no doubt. As his shuttle left the ship and returned to human lines, Mason couldn't stop thinking about her, the way she spoke, the strange kindness in her tone, and the way her laughter had sounded, light and unexpected. Back at base, soldiers rushed to greet him. Everyone wanted to know what happened. Mason simply said, She wants peace. But inside his mind, he couldn't forget her final words. There is more to learn. He didn't know it yet, but that meeting had changed everything. For him, for her, for two entire species, and far away aboard her ship. Queen Sarathis stood alone by the viewing window, staring at the same stars. For the first time in her long reign, she whispered softly to herself, Perhaps the humans are not what I was told. Then very faintly, she smiled again, a smile no Kareth guard dared question. Because deep inside, the Queen of the Kareth Dominion was curious about one human more than she should have been. And somewhere in that vast silence of space, the seeds of something extraordinary had begun to grow. The next few weeks after Mason's return were full of confusion and whispers. At the human base on Vega 9, soldiers still talked about what had happened, how an alien queen had called a single human soldier to meet her alone, and how he had come back alive. Some believed he was lucky. Others thought the queen was planning something. But no one could deny one thing. The war had stopped. No shots fired. No new attacks. Both fleets stayed still like two predators watching each other across a quiet river. And in the middle of that silence, Lieutenant Mason Hale waited for the next message. It came one evening. While he was reviewing reports in the communication tent, the screen flickered and her voice filled the room. Smooth, calm, and strangely warm. Mason Hale. He froze, looking around to see if anyone else heard. The guards nearby stood straight, pretending not to listen. This is Sarathis, she continued. Are you alone? Mason hesitated. Mostly, why? I prefer private conversations, she said. Her tone carried a touch of amusement. Mason sighed and stepped outside the tent where the sky glowed faintly orange with Vega 9's twin suns. He put on his earpiece. I'm alone now. Good, she said softly. Then we can talk. Their talks became a regular thing. Every few days, Sarathis would contact him directly. Sometimes she asked about human history. Other times, she wanted to know about small things. What food tasted like, what dreams were, or why humans enjoyed music. Mason answered honestly, trying to keep things simple. He found himself laughing sometimes during their conversations, something he hadn't done in months. The Queen never seemed offended. In fact, she often laughed too, though her laughter was quiet as if she was learning how to do it. Once Mason told her a story about Earth children playing in the rain. She listened carefully, then said, "Rain, I have seen it in your records. Liquid falling from the sky. It seems beautiful." "It is," Mason said. "When it rains, everything feels alive." There was a short pause. "We have no rain," Sarathis said quietly. "Our world has oceans of light, not water." He smiled. "Then maybe one day you should visit Earth." Her reply came softly. "Perhaps one day I will." But not everyone liked what was happening. In the command tent, General Rains frowned as he watched the communication logs. "This has gone far enough," he said. "The Queen contacts him almost daily. We can't allow her to manipulate him." Another officer replied, "Sir, every time she speaks to him, the battle stays quiet." "Maybe it's working," Rains shook his head. "Or maybe she's just buying time. We can't trust an alien queen who suddenly becomes friendly." Still, they couldn't stop Mason. The council back on Earth had already decided to let the conversations continue, as long as they brought peace. So Mason kept talking to her, unaware that every word was being recorded, every smile being watched by worried generals. One night, Mason sat near the base wall staring at the stars. His communicator buzzed again. "Mason," came her gentle voice. He smiled slightly. "You really don't sleep, do you?" "I do not need to," she said. "But I find myself thinking." "About what?" "About you." Mason's heartbeat skipped. He looked up at the night sky, unsure what to say. "Me? Why?" "You are unlike any human I have met," she said. "You do not hide your thoughts. You speak honestly. You even joke in my presence. Most would fear me." He laughed nervously. "Maybe I'm just bad at following rules." "I think you are brave," she said. For a moment, the radio fell silent. Mason didn't know what to say, and she didn't rush him. Finally, he said, "Bravery and foolishness often look the same." Her laugh came, light and echoing through the stars. "Then perhaps I like both." Over time, the soldiers around Mason began to notice a change. He seemed calmer, more thoughtful. When the Queen's messages came through, the base grew quiet. Everyone pretended not to listen, but curiosity filled their eyes. Private Darren whispered one day, "She talks to him like they're friends." Another soldier replied, "Friends? It's more than that. Did you hear her tone yesterday? She almost sounded gentle." Even the gruff sergeant muttered, "I've seen him fight 10 battles without blinking, but one message from her and he acts like he's talking to an old friend." Rumors spread like wildfire. Some soldiers joked that Mason had charmed the Queen. Others thought the Queen was trying to charm him instead. But deep down, everyone knew something real was happening, something that could change the course of history. One day, the Queen invited him again to her ship. "Come aboard," she said. "There are things I cannot explain over distance." Mason hesitated. "My general won't like that." "I will send an official request for a diplomatic visit," she said firmly. "He will have no reason to refuse," and she was right. The next morning, a golden message arrived, an official Kareth invitation sealed with the Queen's crest. The general had no choice but to agree. "You'll go," Rains said, "but this time you'll wear a body camera. We want to see what happens." "Yes, sir," Mason said, though he didn't like the idea of being watched during a meeting that had become strangely personal. When he arrived at her ship again, the same calm silence welcomed him. The alien guards bowed as before, and the great golden gates opened to reveal Sarathis. This time she wore a flowing mantle of silver cloth that shimmered like moonlight. The hall was dimly lit, soft light falling across her face. "Mason Hale," she said. "You returned," he nodded. "You asked, didn't you?" She smiled faintly. "And you obeyed." "How human," he laughed quietly. "You make that sound like a good thing." "Sometimes," she replied. "Sit with me." They sat together near a wide window showing the stars. Sarathis held a small sphere of light in her hand. "This," she said, "is a map of the war zones. I can end the conflict with one command. But my council will demand proof that humans can be trusted." Mason looked at her. "What kind of proof?" "Something beyond treaties or words," she said softly. "Something personal." Her gaze lingered on him for a moment longer than before. He felt her eyes like sunlight on his skin, warm and heavy. "Mason?" she said quietly. Why did you not fear me when we first met?" He smiled a little. "Because fear makes mistakes, and I didn't want to make one in front of a queen." Her laugh echoed again, soft, melodic. Honest as always. Then she leaned slightly closer, her voice dropping. "And if I told you that I found you intriguing, would you still not fear me?" Mason froze. "Intriguing?" "Yes," she said. "Your thoughts, your humor, even your courage. You are unlike any being I've met in centuries." He cleared his throat, trying to keep his composure. "Well, I'll take that as a compliment, Your Majesty." "It is," she said, her eyes glowing brighter. "Do humans not understand when they are admired?" Mason felt his heart beat faster. "I understand. I just didn't expect it." For a brief second, her hand reached out, not to touch but to hover close to his arm. The air between them shimmered faintly. The guards nearby stood stiff, unsure what to do. None of them had ever seen their queen act like this. Back at the human base, the camera feed showed everything. When Sarathis leaned closer, a shocked silence filled the command tent. General Rains stared at the screen, speechless. Is she flirting with him?" One officer whispered. No one answered. They just watched. On screen, Mason smiled faintly and said, "Maybe humans and Kareth aren't so different after all." Sarathis replied softly, "Perhaps not. Perhaps we were meant to meet." Then, as if realizing how silent the room had become, she looked toward the unseen cameras and said, "You may end your surveillance now, General. I dislike being watched." The screen went black. Later, when Mason returned, the base was filled with questions. Soldiers surrounded him asking, "What did she say? What did she want? Did she really smile at you again?" Mason just sighed and said, "She wants peace. That's all that matters." But his eyes betrayed something else in a quiet confusion, a warmth he didn't understand. He spent that night staring at the stars again, thinking about her laughter, her words, and that brief moment when her hand had almost touched his. And somewhere, aboard her ship, Queen Sarathis stood at her window, thinking of the same thing. For the first time in Kareth history, the Queen's heart felt restless. The war was still paused. The peace talks hadn't yet begun, but every soldier on both sides knew one truth. The Queen was no longer just curious about humanity. She was curious about one man, and that realization made every general, every commander, and every warrior across the galaxy go utterly silent. The days after the meeting on Vega 9 felt heavy for everyone. The war had not officially ended, but the gunfire had stopped. Soldiers who once fought fiercely now waited in quiet tension, watching the skies for any sign of movement. Lieutenant Mason Hale tried to focus on his daily duties, but his thoughts kept drifting back to the same image, the golden eyes of Queen Sarathis. Every word she had spoken to him, every strange smile replayed in his mind like an echo that refused to fade. He told himself it was just diplomacy, that she was only pretending to be friendly. But deep down he knew her words had felt sincere. There was something in the way she spoke, something almost human beneath her royal calmness. Still, the human command didn't share his feelings. Orders from Earth a week after the Queen's visit. A message arrived from Earth's High Command. The holographic transmission appeared before the entire leadership group inside the base's command center. Admiral Rhodes, a strict man with sharp eyes, appeared on the screen. His tone was cold and firm. "Lieutenant Hale," he said, "you are hereby ordered to cease all communication with the alien Queen. You are to return to base and await reassignment." Mason stood stiffly, trying to hide his surprise. "Sir, with all due respect, Queen Sarathis may be the only reason this war is paused. Ending talks with her could—" "Enough," the Admiral interrupted. "You've grown too close to her." "This is not a friendship, soldier. It's a risk. The Kareth may be using you to weaken our defense. You are being transferred to another front immediately." The transmission ended. The room was silent. Every officer stared at Mason with mixed emotions, pity, confusion, maybe even envy. Everyone had seen the Queen's attention toward him. And now it was clear that Earth feared what it could mean. The farewell. He didn't want that night. Mason sat alone outside the camp. The twin moons of Vega 9 hung low, painting the battlefield in pale light. The air was quiet except for the faint hum of distant machines. He stared at the stars and thought about all that had happened. The battles, the fear, the strange connection that had formed between him and someone from another world. He knew that obeying orders was his duty. But leaving without saying goodbye felt wrong. Still, what could he do? He couldn't just call an alien queen like she was an old friend. But as if fate had heard his thoughts, his communicator suddenly lit up. A familiar soft voice came through the channel. "Mason Hale." He froze. "Sarathis?" Her tone was calm, but he could sense the concern behind it. "You have been silent. Are you avoiding me?" He hesitated. "No. It's just that command ordered me to stop speaking with you." There was a pause. Then her voice lowered, filled with quiet disappointment. "I see. Your leaders fear me." "They fear losing control," Mason said honestly. "They think you're manipulating me." "And are you manipulated, human?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "No, just confused." For a moment neither of them spoke. Only the faint sound of wind passed between them. Then Sarathis said softly, "Meet me one last time, before you leave." "Sarathis, that's not possible." "I will find a way," she interrupted. "You deserve a farewell." The signal ended before he could reply. Mason looked at the sky, half believing she wouldn't come. But a strange feeling told him otherwise. The sky that shook. The next morning, Mason's transport was ready to depart. Dozens of soldiers stood in line as the massive ship began its warm-up sequence. Engines rumbled, dust filled the air, and the sound of machinery drowned out everything else. Mason stepped aboard quietly, his heart heavy, but then the sky darkened. A deep hum rolled across the field, followed by a beam of golden light descending from the clouds. Every soldier looked up in shock. The Kareth flagship, the Queen's personal vessel, appeared above them, its shimmering armor glowing like the sun. "By the stars," whispered one soldier. The airbase alarms blared. "All units, prepare for engagement. Unknown vessel incoming." But before any weapon could fire, the Queen's voice echoed across every channel. "Human fleet, stand down. I come for no war." Her words were calm but powerful, carrying authority that froze even the bravest men. A beam of light touched down before the transport. And there she appeared, Queen Sarathis herself walking out of the glow, her golden armor shining under the morning sun. Everyone fell silent. Weapons stayed raised, but no one dared to shoot. She walked straight toward Mason. The moment of truth. Mason stepped forward, ignoring the shouts of his commanding officers. His boots crunched on the gravel as he met her halfway. "Sarathis, what are you doing here?" he whispered, her expression softened. "Your people want you gone, but I will not let you disappear without words." The soldiers around them held their breath. Even the wind seemed to stop. "You showed me what kindness feels like," she continued quietly. "In your eyes I saw something no Kareth has seen before, compassion without condition." Mason felt his chest tighten. "Then use it, Sarathis. Use it to stop this war, please." She took a slow breath. "Do you trust me, Mason Hale?" He nodded. "Yes." "Then remember this moment," she said. "Because it will change everything." Before he could respond, she lifted her hand. A soft golden light spread across the battlefield. Every human device, weapons, ships, drones, froze in place as if time itself had stopped. Her soldiers in orbit watched in silence. She had used her royal power, something no Kareth ruler had ever risked before. She looked into Mason's eyes. "I will speak to my council. I will end this. Not because of orders, but because of choice." Mason could hardly breathe. "And what about us?" A faint, almost human smile crossed her face. "We will meet again, when the stars themselves decide it." Then she turned, her glowing figure rising back into the beam of light. The silence that followed was heavier than any explosion. The aftermath, when the Queen's ship vanished into the clouds, the humans stood frozen. The air felt strange, calm, yet alive with energy. Admiral Rhodes shouted orders to restart systems, but the soldiers hardly listened. All eyes were on Mason. "What did you do?" someone whispered. He looked up, still trying to process what had happened. "I didn't do anything," he said softly. "She made her choice." A few soldiers stepped closer. "You talked to her like she was one of us," one of them said. Mason nodded. Maybe that's what she needed, someone to treat her like more than a queen. No one had an answer to that. Hours later, the transport finally left Vega 9. Mason watched the planet grow smaller through the window, thinking about everything he had seen. The Queen's voice still echoed in his mind, calm, graceful, unshakable. He didn't know if he'd ever see her again. But deep inside, he believed her promise. The message days later. As his ship crossed the silent void of space, Mason's communicator blinked again. A secret transmission came through, coded untraceable. He hesitated, then opened it. The hologram of Queen Sarathis appeared, faint but clear. Her eyes glowed softly as she spoke. "I have spoken to my council. The war will end," Mason smiled. "You did it," she nodded slowly. "You showed me that peace is not weakness. It is strength of another kind. I will send envoys to Earth soon. And, Mason Hale," her voice softened, "do not forget what you taught me." Before he could reply, the message faded. He sat there for a long time, staring into the endless stars. Every soldier who had seen that day on Vega 9 would remember how an alien queen had crossed the lines of war, not with power, but with heart. And as for Mason Hale, he realized something that would be told in human history forever. Sometimes peace begins with a single conversation. Sometimes it begins with someone brave enough to care. The stars looked peaceful again. For the first time in months, no human ship fired and no Kareth fleet appeared on the radar. The endless war that once consumed the galaxy had gone quiet, like a storm finally losing its rage. Lieutenant Mason Hale sat inside a small observation deck on the cruiser Aurora's Light, staring through the glass at the glowing horizon of the nearby sun. The quiet hum of the engines felt almost soothing now. He thought about everything that had happened: the battle on Vega 9, the strange meeting with Queen Sarathis, and the moment she had promised to end the war. He still wondered if it had all been real or just some strange dream born from chaos, but deep down he knew it was real, because no dream could leave a mark so deep on the heart. Peace that surprised the galaxy. Few weeks later, every human base received the same unbelievable transmission. The Kareth Dominion had withdrawn from all war zones. Their ships vanished from battlefields. Their troops retreated without firing a single shot, and then came the message. A formal broadcast addressed to all intelligent species of the sector appeared across thousands of channels. The image of Queen Sarathis appeared, calm, regal, her golden armor gleaming as always. "To all sentient beings," she began, her voice steady and powerful, "the Kareth Dominion will no longer seek conquest. We have learned that strength without compassion is hollow. Humanity has shown us a new path, one where power does not mean destruction." Every soldier, diplomat, and citizen watching stood in shock. The galaxy that once feared her words now listened with respect. And though she didn't say his name, Mason knew those words were born from their last conversation: a hero. They didn't expect on Earth. The reaction was mixed. The High Council claimed victory, saying human diplomacy had forced the Kareth to surrender. But among the soldiers who had fought on Vega 9, everyone knew the truth. They whispered the real story. How the Queen had spoken directly to one man, and how that man's words had changed her heart. Mason tried to stay away from attention, but he couldn't escape it. When he returned to Earth, reporters crowded the landing zone. Cameras flashed. Voices shouted questions. "Lieutenant Hale, did you really speak to the Queen? Is it true she saved your life? Are the rumors about your connection real?" Mason didn't answer. He just walked through the noise, his eyes forward, thinking only of that moment when Sarathis's golden light had surrounded him. He was given medals, awards, and promotions. They called him the man who stopped the war, but inside Mason didn't feel like a hero. He had only spoken honestly to someone who needed to hear the truth. The new dawn months passed. The treaty between Earth's alliance and the Kareth Dominion became official. For the first time, human ships entered Kareth space without fear. Trade began. Knowledge was shared. It was strange to see humans and insectoid Kareth standing side by side, talking peacefully after years of fighting. The scars of war began to fade slowly, and yet Mason couldn't stop wondering about her. Where was Sarathis now? What did she think of this fragile peace she had created? One night, while he stood near the edge of the orbital station above Mars, he looked out at the vastness of space. The stars twinkled quietly. Then his communicator blinked with a faint golden light, a secret code. The same one he had seen before. His heart raced. The Queen's message. He accepted the signal. The hologram appeared, faint but clear. Queen Sarathis, her eyes glowing softly as if they carried the light of another world. "Mason Hale," she said warmly, I am pleased to see that peace has held. Mason smiled. You kept your word. She inclined her head slightly. I always keep my promises. My people are learning slowly. Change is difficult for them, but it has begun. You would not believe it. We now have schools that teach about human art, about laughter. Mason chuckled. That's something I never thought I'd hear. She studied him carefully. And you, human soldier, do you regret what you did? Many of your kind call you a legend now. He shook his head. I'm not a legend, just someone who talked when others were too afraid to listen. Her golden eyes softened. That is exactly why I remember you. The silence that followed was not awkward. It was peaceful. Two beings from different worlds connected by something beyond words. I wish I could see your world, he said quietly. Her lips curved into a faint smile, perhaps one day when fear has truly faded. For now, I can only send you something. The hologram flickered, and suddenly a small crystal materialized from a transporter beam beside him, a golden gem that glowed faintly in the dark. What is this? He asked. A gift, she said softly. It holds a piece of our song, the melody of peace. When you play it, it will remind you that even the greatest distance cannot silence understanding. He looked at the crystal, amazed. Thank you, Sarathis. Her image began to fade. But before it vanished completely, she said, Until the stars fade, I will remember you, Mason Hale. And then she was gone. The legend spreads years past. Humanity and the Kareth became unlikely allies. Together they explored distant systems, built shared colonies, and created new worlds where children of both species could grow without fear. The story of Vega 9 became part of history books. Cadets in military academies studied the Hale Protocol, the idea that communication could be stronger than any weapon. And in Kareth culture, songs were written about the human who spoke to the Queen. To them, Mason was not just a soldier. He was a symbol of courage and empathy, a being who had changed the course of their destiny. Mason never cared for fame. He lived quietly, working as a diplomat between both races, helping others understand what he and Sarathis had discovered, that true strength lies not in dominance, but in compassion. Sometimes at night he would sit by a window and hold the golden crystal she had sent him. When he touched it, it played a faint melody, soft, strange, and beautiful, and for a moment he could almost hear her voice in the stars. The last transmission one day, many years later, a deep space relay picked up a message, weak, almost lost in static. It was in the Kareth frequency, but with human translation embedded inside. The message was short. To the people of Earth, Queen Sarathis of the Kareth Dominion has ended her reign. She has chosen a council of peace to lead in her place. Her final words were simple. Tell the humans that the light they shared will guide us forever. The message ended there. When Mason heard the news, he sat in silence for a long time. He didn't cry. Instead, he smiled faintly, looking up at the night sky. She did it, he whispered. She really did it. The stars above seemed brighter that night. Epilogue. The star that shines alone. Decades later, children studying galactic history would ask the same question. Is it true the alien queen once liked a human soldier? Their teachers would smile and tell the story of the war that ended, not with destruction but with understanding. They would speak of Lieutenant Mason Hale, who had no special powers, no great rank, only the courage to talk to someone everyone else feared. And when they asked what became of him, the answer was always the same. He became part of the stars. Because after Mason's time, when humans explored farther than ever before, one of their telescopes found something strange, a single golden light floating in deep space, brighter than all the rest. It pulsed softly like a heartbeat. Scientists said it was just a dying star, but to those who remembered the legend, it was something else. It was the promise of the Queen, still watching, still remembering. And though ages would pass, every soldier and explorer who looked up at that golden light would whisper the same words. Sometimes the bravest thing a human can do is care.